So this is what we're making, a textured ring with a love knot spinner ring for the outside. So this is 0.5 of a millimeter thick and 7 millimeters wide for this particular ring. And this is to acknowledge Rick. He got his new engraving machine and made me a prezi. Nice, huh? Today I'm making a size L ring. 0 U calipers get the inside diameter. 16.5. Our material is 0.5 today. So that's 17 times 3.14. So 53.4 millimeters long. Now we can just cut this roughly because we're going to texture it. Texturing it will stretch it. So we'll get our measurement again after we've textured it. So we can set our calipers at 53.4. Tighten the little nut, and that way it holds it in position. And I just put the end on my peg so that it doesn't move around. Put the mark, and at the moment we can just cut it with shears. Make sure your shears are sharp. And now we need to anneal this. So it's just a matter of putting it on our soldering block and heating it until it's a dull red. So just keep it a dull red for a few seconds. Don't overheat it. Wait for the red to go away and then quench it in water. Dry the metal. You don't really need to pickle it at this time. We can do that later. So I'm just going to put my bench block, which is just a steel block, on my lap on a piece of timber. I'm going to use my jeweler's hammer, which is just a cross peen basically, fairly sharp edge. And I'm just going to take my time and get a nice consistent pattern from one end to the other. Make sure you go right to the end. Do the whole piece. Now normally a piece of material 0.5 thick would be too thin for a ring, but because we're going to make it anticlastic shape, it'll give it the strength that we need, and 0.5 will be okay. When you get your pattern all finished, straighten the material out because it needs to be flat to get a precise measurement. So I'm just going to trim the end with my shears and take the calipers and mark it on the back because the front has enough of a pattern you wouldn't be able to see your scratch. Now hammering it, you can see that it's become about 8 millimeters longer than our original measurement. So I'm just going to cut it with the shears slightly past the line because I want to file back to the line. So I just brace it against the end of my bench pin. Make sure you hold your file flat. Check against the safe edge of your file to make sure it is flat. Do the other end. And we're just filing to get rid of that little rolled edge from our shears. Now, check your measurement. Again, you've left your calipers there. And that's perfect. We like perfect. Now, we're going to have to anneal this again because we've work hardened the whole piece by hammering it. So once again, we'll just heat it until it's a dull red. Now the material is annealed, and we'll pickle it at this point before we form it into a ring. A little hint, before you drop it in the pickle, give it a little bit of a bend. That way, no matter how it sits in the pickle, you'll be able to pick it up with your tweezers. If it's just flat, it just drops to the bottom, lays flat, and it's really difficult to pick up. I'm out of the pickle. I use sodium bisulfate for pickle. You can buy it in pool supply places. So dry your metal, and I'm going to hallmark it now. Because when I tidy up the ends after I've soldered it, I can tidy up these marks for the hallmark. It always flattens the metal a little bit, but I'll wait until I round it up before I fix this. So just flat half-round pliers to form the middle. Don't grab the very end or you'll damage it. And we just want to form it into an oval because it gives you a better solder joint if it's an oval rather than round. So use your fingers, your pliers, get the ends so that they fit perfectly. Make sure it's not twisted. Oftentimes when you're doing a flat ring like this, you can just use your parallel jaw pliers to give it a squeeze, and it takes the twist out. So once you get it perfect, we'll put it on the third hand and solder it. So I have the ring on my third hand with the joint down, and mix up your flux, because if there's liquid on top of your flux, it's just water, and water doesn't do very well for keeping your metal clean. So I'm fluxing it top and bottom, and I'm going to take about a 1.5 millimeter long piece of hard solder. Because if it's a good joint, it won't take much solder. And I'll place it with my flux brush, and I'll just place it across the join. Now I'm going to heat on the inside of the ring, because if I heat on the outside, the solder will run out and flood my pattern, which I don't want. So dry out your flux. And once the flux is dry, you can shift your solder using your solder pick. So I'm just going to brush the flame back and forth on the join. When the metal is hot enough to melt the solder, that's perfect. And when you see it flow, take your flame away, because if you keep the flame there too long, it'll still go through and flood the join. So we'll have a look. And it's a nice small amount of solder on the inside, so we'll just quench it and pickle it. So we're out of the pickle. Dry the metal. Have a look, because you may not have to do anything to this join. If it were a good join, you'll have just the tiniest solder line. If you want to sand it, what you're going to have to do is first round it up. So round it up on the ring mandrel. Rawhide hammer or plastic hammer, it doesn't really matter. Flip the ring over. Now, when you're sanding this, because it's only 0.5 thick, you're really going to have to be careful. Otherwise, you'll get the ring so thin that it'll be too thin and you'll have to start again. So if you sand the area, which if you sand it, you'd probably use a sanding stick, what's going to happen is you're going to blank out part of your design. In this case, you can go back on the ring mandrel, use the same hammer that you made the design with, and go over it. Now, only do as much as you need to do, because as you're hammering, it's going to make this bigger. And at this point, I would go back and look where my hole marks are and put a few texture marks on top. Ta-da! So now we're going to sand the edges, and we'll do that just by putting a piece of sandpaper on our bench. And doing this. And it's just to make sure that the edges of the ring where the solder join is are nice and flat. Do both sides. And you can see when it's finished, because you'll have a nice dull finish everywhere. Now we're going to make a ring to go over the outside, and we'll need the diameter of the outside of the ring. So measure it in 2 or 3 different places and average. Looks like 1766. And we'll add 1, because in this case the wire I'm using is 1 millimeter, 1866, and then just slightly bigger, so 19. It's slightly bigger so that it'll move around the ring. So 19 times 3.14, 5966 millimeters long. Just for fun, I'm going to do an overhand knot in this wire. So I'm just going to stick that in through, grab it, and then pull it. So I'll just put this end in a vise, grab this end and pull it. So I put the end in vertically, and then I bend it down like this so that way it gives me a straight pull. And I'm using the draw tongs to grab the end, but grab just the very end because we don't want to damage any more of the wire than's absolutely necessary. So now we have our knot, and we'll cut these ends, and we'll cut the wire to length to make our next ring. We'll cut the end off. You could cut it with your side cutters and file it, or you can saw it. Usually when you saw, you damage less metal. And then file just to make sure it's nice and flat. And now we'll mark it and cut it. Yeah, we use the calipers. More precise. I usually just slide my thumbnail up to the mark, and that way it doesn't go away. File the end flat. And now we'll take our flat half-round pliers and just form this. But what would be nice would be if you put the flat part of the knot flat when you're forming it. So you can see if it's this way, it'll be a different diameter than if it's this way. So we'd do the flat part. We'll flatten it out more when we form it. So form it into an oval just like a regular ring. Don't grab the very end of the wire. And when you get your join perfect, we'll solder it. So you can see I have the join up in this one. You could lay it flat on your soldering block if you want, but I'm quite happy to do it up here because I can see more what's happening all the way around. So flux the join, and I put 1.5 millimeter long piece of hard solder. The wire is 0.5 diameter, the solder wire. And I just pick up the little piece of solder with my solder pick. Warm the join, and I just rest the pick with the solder on the join, heat it, thus solder will flow very quickly. Now, I'm going to quench this in water and pickle it. So once the ring is out of the pickle, dry it, round it up on your ring mandrel. This is small enough you can just push it down with your fingers to a point. And before you hammer it, check it against your first ring. Yeah, it doesn't quite go, so that's good. We'll just hammer until it's the correct fit. Just do a little bit at a time. We want to make sure it's not too big. Take your time, we're not in a hurry. So there you can see the ring, the outer ring fits the inner ring. Now at this point we'll tidy up our solder join. It won't take much because it was a good join, a good fit, and we used a small amount of solder. So what we'll do is just the smallest amount possible with the sanding stick on the outside. We won't do the inside at all, not necessary. Now we're ready to form our inner ring so that it holds the outer ring. So I'm just using a doming punch, and I'm just gently going to dome the ring. Slide the outer ring on, turn it over, and gently dome the other side. And go back and forth, and it's just make sure that it holds the outer ring. We don't want too much of a flare. Otherwise, what will happen is you'll split the ring. So now you can see it's holding the ring in place, and it still moves, and we'll polish it now. So I'm out of the pickle. I'm going to just pop this in my tumbler. And I use, as you can see, I use a rotary tumbler with assorted shot, steel shot. So the tumbler's finished, and I just use what they call burnishing compound in the tumbler, which is just a mild soap. So now we just have to rinse it off with water, and it's done.